For more on how lawmakers are responding to those Tucker Carlson January 6th tapes, Nikole Killion joins us now. Nikole, I know you just had an interview with Congressman Bennie Thompson. What can you tell us about what he's saying, along with some others, about what we saw from Tucker Carlson's show last night?
Well, as you know, Bennie Thompson was the chairman of the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. And, of course, one of the main arguments that Tucker Carlson made on his program last night is that all the work of the committee was more or less a lie in his view. And so I asked Thompson about that. He said he does not feel that the committee's work has been undermined, but he did express a lot of concern about Speaker McCarthy's decision to hand over this security footage, this 40,000 plus hours of tape, over to Tucker Carlson. Take a listen. Is there any way to put the genie back in the bottle now that this is out here, or are there forever going to be these conflicting narratives about what happened January 6th?
Look, the speaker made a mistake. I think by giving one news media company sole right to this 44,000 hours of video without any standards or protocols in place is not what this country deserves.
You know, the chairman obviously calling this a dereliction of duty on the part of Speaker McCarthy. And, you know, in terms of the broader reaction that we have heard from lawmakers, I mean, look, it is split. There are many conservative Republicans who, even at the time of the January 6th riot and the days thereafter, argued that this was a tourist visit in their view. And some of them are still making that case. Congressman Joe Wilson going to the floor earlier today saying, thank you, Tucker Carlson, the truth has been revealed. But you also have Republicans like Mitch McConnell, who said that he is aligning himself with the view of the U.S. Capitol Police Chief, who called much of this footage that was released by Tucker Carlson misleading and offensive, and says that it doesn't provide the full context, especially to those who were here firsthand. Of course, many Democrats bashing the release of this material as well, in addition to Speaker McCarthy's decision to release the footage. And we're still waiting to hear from the Speaker in terms of how he's going to respond to all of this.
So he hasn't responded at all, Nikole, with lawmakers from both sides slamming his decision to turn this footage over. I mean, how long can he wait before he says something?
Well, he hasn't at this time. He says that he will talk to reporters at some point, we expect later this evening. So, of course, we'll continue to monitor that. But interestingly, I would note that particularly with respect to Mitch McConnell, he was asked multiple times today if he thought that Speaker McCarthy had made a mistake by giving these tapes out. And McConnell would not answer that question, again, just saying that he supports the view of the U.S. Capitol Police Chief in terms of how some of this video has been characterized, and understanding that those who were here, of course, experienced something much different than what Tucker Carlson portrayed.
And, of course, it's not just Mitch McConnell, but several Republicans are delivering fiery responses to that footage. Let's take a listen.
I think particularly when you come into the chambers, when you start opening the members' desks, when you stand up in their balcony, to somehow put that in the same category as a permitted peaceful protest is just a lie.
Look, I assume at some point all that footage is going to be out there in circulation, so everybody can make their own determinations.
What do you think that happened that day?
Well, I mean, I think it was, it was an attack on the Capitol.
I think it's when you see police barricades breached, when you see police officers assaulted, all of that, or you had to be in close proximity to it. If you were just a tourist, you should have probably lined up at the visitor center.
Nikole, you're running after those lawmakers all the time, day to day. Can you tell me what it takes for a senator to call something BS in that way, to be so fired up about something?
Yeah, well, I think, again, for many of these lawmakers, they were here that day, and many of them had to be evacuated and taken to safe places. So they understand that this was an attack on our democracy. But again, going back to the Q&A that we had earlier with Mitch McConnell when he addressed reporters in his weekly press conference, I asked him, why is it that some in his party continue to downplay this attack and not even acknowledge that it was an insurrection, and why some of them have that view. And so that is a question that he did not answer. But clearly, this notion that it wasn't an attack, it was this peaceful demonstration. There are these two competing narratives, again, many which are being perpetrated by some members of Congress. And so that is why this has just become such a politicized issue here on the Capitol, and kind of inspiring these very fiery responses from lawmakers, because many of them are very fervent in their positions. And as much as some people, don't defend what happened that day and believe that this was an insurrection, you equally have, a small group of lawmakers who continues to insist that, again, this was, they continued to even defend some of these defendants who are in jail. So it continues to be a very explosive issue on Capitol Hill. And again, we'll have to see how the Speaker responds to this going forward.
Yes, we will be watching, Nikole. Thank you so much.